we could start getting some things done if we, as a community, who maybe we are suffering ourselves, or maybe we know someone who is suffering, but the only way that change will happen in mental health in our country, in our communities, is if we become active in voicing our desire for change. The need for support in this area is so important.
Welcome to the Be It Till You See It podcast, where we talk about taking messy action, knowing that perfect is boring. I'm Lesley Logan, Pilates instructor and fitness business coach. I've trained thousands of people around the world, and the number one thing I see stopping people from achieving anything is self-doubt. My friends, action brings clarity, and it's the antidote to fear. Each week, my guests will bring bold, executable, intrinsic, and targeted steps that you can use to put yourself first and be it till you see it. It's a practice, not a perfect. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, Brad here today. Today we're going to talk about depression, suicide, and mental health. And if that's triggering for you, feel free to skip this episode. If you or anyone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide or are in a mental crisis, you can call 988 in the US for the Suicide and Crisis Hotline. And there are definitely hotlines in every country around the world, I'm sure. So take a quick look online. Anyway, on to the episode.
Welcome back to the Be It Till You See It interview recap. Are my co-host in life, Brad, and I are going to dig into the earnest convo I had with Stephen Wilson in our last episode. If you haven't yet listened to that interview, feel free to pause this now, go back and listen to that one, and then come back and join us. You might be wondering what the point of this interview is if you listen to that one. And the whole thing is like, my freaking goodness, we don't talk about mental health enough. And either in your journey, you might personally have some issues with your mental health, whether it is something that you need to medicate, or it's just something you have to have some therapy around, or someone in your life is. And it can be fucking difficult when someone in your life is going through something you can't fix. And so I really wanted to have this earnest conversation. But before I get into that, today is February 8th, 2024, and it's a Laugh and Get Rich Day. And you know what? Fuck out of that. It's a day to laugh and to enjoy the many benefits that laughter brings. The biggest benefit of laughter is it improves our health. Laughing can elevate our mood, lower stress and blood pressure, and strengthen the immune system. Pause. I'm going to just tell you, when I grew up, my parents used to tickle us and go, laughter brings healing to the bones.
It's the best medicine.
Laughter is the best medicine. And like, we just would laugh right before bed, which makes zero sense because we couldn't fall asleep afterwards. But anyways,
fired up. Yeah,
that's fine. Back to this script of what this day is about. In this way, laughter makes us rich because health is wealth, after all. But laughter can also contribute to our financial gains by enriching our professional lives. Those who laughed often tend to be happier. Hello. Happy workers are more productive and are liked by coworkers. That's true.
So I looked into this because I was like, laugh and get rich. Come on. Are you for real?
That Think and Grow Rich is that by like Laugh and Get Rich by Napoleon Hill.
I was a bit skeptical, to say the least. So can laughter actually have an impact on our income? Turns out there is an NIH, or a National Institute of Health, study that looked into this exact thing. And the results revealed a significant relationship between equivalent income and the frequency of laughter. Social relationships and family structures were also associated with the frequency of laughter. So, surprise, laughter can actually have an impact on your income and your relationships with other people. So,
you're
how
not
about
going to say the next line?
Laugh it up, fuzzball.
That's a Star Wars reference, by the way. Katie Donnelly got it, and Rachel Piper. And maybe if there's other Star Wars people, feel free to let me know. All right. Let's go. So February 11th is when we actually start agency mini number 10.
Number 10.
So that's just in 3 days. You can go to OPC. No, that's not it.
Nope. You can go to profitablepilates.com/mini.
Wow. Yeah. I've never done that. Profitable. That's how rich I am. profitablepilates.com/mini to sign up, because we have yet to pick agency mini number 11 states. And that's not a threat. It's just reality. We are really, really trying to get down to one time a year with this. And we don't know if it's going to be this year, but it could be. So you want to sign up because that's could be the last time. We don't know.
Yeah. So we're going to be helping fitness business owners just like you figure out their messaging, clarify their purpose, and how to create a pitch that isn't salesy and feels natural to you in a week of getting to know Lesley and I and our coaching style. And then afterwards, you can join us in the agency program.
And or just get every fucking question you've ever had answered.
Yep.
Like you think you want to start a membership, we'll tell you pros and cons, and we'll tell you if you're ready. And if you are ready, we'll tell you how to keep going. And if you're not, we'll tell you how to get ready. Like we're not here to shoot anyone's dreams down. We're here to actually make them possible. And we don't want you to waste your time doing it. Okay, now OPC. We have summer camp coming up this summer, and we're letting you know that it's coming up because it's going to be fucking amazing. And usually throughout the year, we do little workshops. We're not doing that anymore. We're doing a summer camp instead. So you don't want to miss it because it's going to be amazing. And you're going to go to opc.me/workshops to get on the wait list. Way to go, babe. Adding that right in right there.
Snuck it in.
Live. opc.me/workshops. That's plural. Okay. Then there's an OPC Reformer Challenge going on right now. Well, technically
Actually,
it's just wrapped.
Just
wrapped. But you know what? It didn't wrap for you because you can this is why we're amazing. You can actually sign up for it right now because it starts when you want to start it.
You sure
and
can.
That's opc.me/challenge. And if you're like, but y'all, I want an accountability challenge, but I don't have a reformer. Well, keep listening because in March, we will have a matte version for you. So it's really, really amazing. You can start that anytime. If you're like, this week's not great, LL, I'm going to start next week. Fine. Write down opc.me/challenge and then sign up next week. Running down this list here, I already mentioned the March Madness Matte Challenge because it's coming up in March. So, stay tuned. The pre-sale for the Barrels flashcard deck. Here's what I can tell you right now, because I just fucking placed the order. The spine corrector is finally available from Contrology. And if you're like, what? Yes, it is. Do you want my discount link? Yes, you do. We'll put it in the show notes, but also
go to opc.me/perks.
Perks. And if you're like, fuck, they want me to call them, LL. Well, guess what? Reach out to us. We got an email of a salesperson who will hook you up with my discount link, but you have to email me for that email. So you want to, for the Barrels deck, the best price is always the pre-sale price. Why? Because we make you wait several months to get them. So your payment for waiting and being patient is 30% off. And the only way to get that is to be on the wait list for the flashcards, which is opc.me/flashcard waitlist. Do you see how the wait lists are where the epic shit happens? Because that's where it happens.
That's what happens.
That's where it happens. And listen to this podcast, obviously. So opc.me/flashcard wait list. I'm going to talk over the dog.
I couldn't help myself. Every time he touched me, it's like static electricity zap in my earballs.
For sure. Everyone who's watching on YouTube is watching us like do this weird thing with our head. Because I'm being shocked in my earballs. Mm-hmm. Okay. So last but not least, the Cambodia early bird has closed. And oh my God, you guys.
There may still be a few spots left.
We don't know because we're recording this in the future, in the past, for the future.
For the future.
But if you go to lesleylogan.co/retreat,
yes.
Plural or singular?
Singular.
You can sign up and see if if it says sold out. Well, you're.
Lo siento.
Yeah, lo siento. Sumto. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
/not. Get on the fucking wait list next time.
Go to retreats plural and get on the wait list for next year.
All right. Before we get into this awesome topic about mental health, do we have an audience question, Brad?
We sure did. Thank you, Sean from YouTube. What are the measurements for the arm and leg springs on the Cadillac if I wanted to make my Cadillac more classical?
So I love this, Sean. And here's the quick and dirty answer. I have listed the entire measurements for every place where you would want to place a hook on your Cadillac or tower or wall unit on the Cadillac flashcard. So you buy that flashcard deck, it's right there. And also in centimeters, because I am aware that the rest of the world uses the metric system. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, what system do we use?
Imperial.
That sounds so dumb. Imperial?
It is.
In this country, an imperial system? What? That makes no sense. It makes me think of like going to the Great Wall of China. Imperial? Okay.
Because we rule.
Wow. You know what, you guys? America makes us really wonder too. Okay. But I do have the metric system listed, as well as the imperial. Inches versus centimeters for people who are like, what's the translation there? If you're wanting to make your equipment more classical, if you're an OPC member, we actually help out with this a lot, by the way, because we can look at each particular piece of equipment and give you feedback on yours, also based on your body. But the other thing you want to consider, everyone who is retrofitting or not even retrofitting, but just like making modifications to the equipment you have. It's very important you know this. Don't go buy clips at the hardware store. You got to be really, really careful what you're doing, because your equipment that you have is definitely tested to stand the test of time for the springs that are sold with it. So if you are buying springs that are not the brand of equipment that you have, here is the deal. Should some shit hit the fan, the way the insurance companies work is your insurance company is going to get sued. Don't stress about it. That's why you have one. But then your insurance company is going to go to the manufacturer. The manufacturers go, nope, we don't use those springs on our equipment. Now, that doesn't mean you're personally responsible. It just means that your insurance company is going to take the fall for it, and they don't get to pass the buck off to somebody else. Again, don't stress about it, but you need to make sure that if you are making changes to your equipment, that the clips that you buy go with the springs, because the springs and the clips that they sell with those springs have been tested for the torque of the springs. So if you go to the Home Depot, or I don't know what you call it in another country, those clips are not tested for the torque.
They call it the Home D.
We do call it, I got the Home D. They didn't sponsor this episode, so I don't know why we keep saying their name. But if you're going to go to
I bleed orange.
If you're going to look at, do you remember that? Okay, you guys, there's a reel where this girl, she's like, I have never pronounced an L so hard as when I went into the hardware store and said, I need to buy some caulk. But anyways, okay. When you don't want to, so the moral of the story, don't buy your clips at a hardware store. Whatever springs you buy clips from that manufacturer, because they are tested for the torque and tension of the spring and pressure that's about to happen. Keep that in mind. If you're going to make changes, people do this all the time. That doesn't mean it's right. It just, don't stress about it.
Just an FYI.
Just an FYI. It does
Sean,
happen.
thank you for that question on YouTube. And if you would like to leave a question for us, where should they go?
Oh, you can just leave it anywhere.
Oh,
apparently we just pick them up anywhere.
We pretty much do.
We just pick them up anywhere. So I mean, if you send them to the Beit Pod, it's much easier. But just like the TL didn't listen, TLDL, you fast forwarded. Get the flashcards for the Cadillac
TLDL,
deck.
we're making up our own things.
They are also labeled for towers, and you will have the measurements there.
opc.me/flashcards. Okay, now let's talk about Steven Wilson, diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 1978 after years of misdiagnosis and struggles, including a pivotal stay in a mental institution. He eventually found stability. Beyond writing his book, Teetering on a Tightrope, My Bipolar Journey, in 2022, Steven dedicates his time to facilitating 2 mental health support groups, providing a hope and understanding to those navigating similar challenges.
Yeah. So I have to say, like, the more I thought about him, the more I thought about his wife that he's been married to forever.
Yeah.
And when
she's a rock star.
I told my dad about this guy, and my dad was like, I said, yeah, they're married for this many years. And he goes, wow, she's tough.
Right.
Like, and
50 something years of marriage. And for part of it, he was like
misdiagnosed,
completely
mismedicated.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, I resonate with that. And I wanted to have him on for several reasons. First of all, I fell in love with him in a pre-interview chat, and he is, dying as we speak. Like he didn't tell me why he's dying, but he's dying. So I wanted to have him on as quickly as possible, because I really love that he is wanting to share and make a mental health something that we're all talking about. And he dedicates his time, if you listen to the episode, to helping people talk about their mental health.
Yeah.
But also I just think that it can be so hard and can feel so selfish when you are trying to make your magic happen and someone around you is suffering. And so one of my takeaways is it's a very tough job to be a supporter, and you've got to love them. And, making sure they have housing and good stuff. But you can't you also can't fix them. And that's the hardest part, is that we all want to fix people. I know everyone listening here, a lot of them are teachers, a lot of them are in the service industry of some kind, and they're most of you are women. And so you're inherently a caregiver who just want to love up and support people, but you can support them, but you don't have the answers unless you do. Unless you're trained in that, and then you do. Like I have a client who's a psychologist who totally does, but it can be really difficult. Even in her own personal life, she has some family members who have some mental health issues, and she can't help them. They're not her client.
Like if it's family, they also know what you do, and it can be resentful, or they can resent it. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, being a supporter, you just have to be there.
Yeah. And also like, something that I want to bring up that I think is important. We had Lindsay. What was Lindsay's new last name? Lindsay, my old assistant. She did a course for us on Profitable Pilates about being an advocate. And one of the first things she said, which is, she was quoting somebody else, which is like, you can... Lindsay Moore. Lindsay, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. I don't remember your new last name. It's not even new anymore. But she brought up a person's like a quote in the industry is like, you can only advocate, you can only support someone in the amount that you have energy wise. Like there's a Venn diagram of their needs and what you have to offer. And it's very, very important that you are acknowledging what you have to offer. Because if you go beyond that, you now no longer can serve them or yourself or the people you're responsible for in your life. Right. And I think that can be really difficult when we're watching someone suffer, because we can want a lot of things for them. And he has bipolar disorder. But we know people who have gross narcissism and things like that. Like it's really freaking hard, because you're like, I just want them to take their meds, or I just want them to do these things. And you can love them, and you can support them, and you can advocate for them in the amount that you actually have. And that's really, really hard for people to live with, because they want to do more.
Yeah. And, I'm sure there's many of you out there who are in a situation right now where you're supporting someone. And, what Stephen was talking about with that was just loving them. He talked about people say angry things to you, and it's really easy. I guess easy is the wrong word, but you can get to the point where you just want to snap back. And he said, that will never work. It will never work. It just makes me think back through the relationships that I've had in my life, and, trying to be there, trying to be supportive without also being pulled down yourself. That's really challenging.
Yeah. Well, that's like that whole, like, we all ignore, no one listens to security tips anymore on the plane, although we should, because the door just blew off. But like that was.
Did you hear they found somebody's iPhone? It blew out of the plane, 16,000 feet. It landed. It was still working.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy. They also found the plug that came out in the first place, which yeah. At any rate, listen to the security thing. They say one thing that's very important: put your own air mask on first. Right. And we all tend to give more than we have. And it's just, that's not going to help anybody. And if you're not an expert in mental health, it is okay to seek out an expert. And there's also a lot of groups, like in the world of AA and stuff like that. There's Al-Anon. There's different groups for people who have people who suffer from mental health issues, so that you can be seen by people who get you. Cause like you could tell I have friends, like you go to tell them a problem and they like just do not, it's okay for them to be the wrong person, So, which I think is important to acknowledge, that sometimes our friends are amazing, our families are amazing, but they're not the right support for us. And if you're going with if you have someone in your life or you yourself have a mental health situation.
Well, one thing that I really loved that he said, that he talked about was after he moved to Arizona and had the appropriate medical diagnosis, and the meds he was on were actually providing support for him, he really wanted to give back. And so actually before he even moved, he was starting to do speaking at high schools and stuff. But he said when he got to Arizona, they turned him away because he's in his 60s and trying to talk to like 15-year-olds. He wasn't as relatable as they were looking for. So he said, all right, well, I'm going to go do this anyway, but I'm going to work in support groups. And so he began facilitating 2 different support groups. And he's been doing that for the last 8 years. His mission, he said he started that whole thing back in the 90s when he had a clothing store in Ohio, and 2 young people he knew had committed suicide. And that's really took him down the teen route and supporting teens, and then today, he's supporting these groups that are, all ages, but it sounded to me like his passion is still youth and really working with youth. And you had a great question for him. You asked him, hey, we got a lot of moms on this program. How do you begin to identify, or, what do you do if your kid is beginning to struggle and they're unwilling to talk to you or they're exhibiting these different signs? And he said, watch your child and notice if there are changes in their moods or actions, and you do not probe. He said the first telltale sign is that their overall attitude will shift. Whether they're playing, like maybe they're escaping into video games, or you notice that their grades are dropping, or they never go outside. No. These are signs that there's very much like something that's mentally like they're struggling with something, right? And for him, it was abuse. It was sexual abuse, right? And his parents, he said, weren't paying attention, and they wouldn't have known what to do anyway because nobody was talking about it 50 years ago.
That story.
More than 50. It would have been, he's in his 70s now. He's in his 80s now?
I don't know how old he is now, but he was like 8 years old.
Yeah, he was less than 10 years old.
So young.
Yeah.
But you know what's crazy to me is like, we all talk about like, oh, the world is worse now than it was. No, it was fucking terrible then too.
He was raped as an 8-year-old in a movie theater.
Yes.
Like 70 years ago.
There was no language around that. And no one was opening up. Like my parents were very much like, no one's allowed to touch you. These are your private parts. You can only be touched here if you get permission. But that wasn't happening. My dad was never told that. Do you know what I mean? Like I think about my dad's age when I was thinking about Steven, and I was just like, that wasn't happening. But we pretend like nothing was happening bad back then. But it was. It's just it was on the news. It wasn't getting from this location to another location. And
there wasn't the internet to disseminate, that this is happening.
And what are the telltale signs? And you
don't hear about it.
I happened to this morning, I don't know why my news app came up, and I also don't know why I clicked on this article, but I'm glad I did because I think it's really fitting for this. So Jessica Alba, I don't even know what she does today but she was interviewed for a magazine, Real Simple's first mental health issue. She was interviewed for it, and she was very open and honest that she and her daughters go to therapy together. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting that she would share that. And she actually shared how she got her daughters to go to therapy with her. And by the way, every one of my friends who has a daughter, I'm like, just so you know, they're going to hate you for 10 fucking years minimum. At least you got to let it go. You got to be prepared for that. Like they're just going to hate you. But Jessica Alba, she noticed that her daughters and her were having conflicts. And so she actually signed them up for therapy. And she said, this is your hour to tell me everything that you are upset about with me. And so parents listening, if you're trying to get your kiddos to talk to you what's going on, what a great way to preface. This is your vent hour. Like you can beat up, you can say everything you don't like about me in this container. And then there's a therapist there who can help you as a parent articulate what they need, and also can help this kid that you're raising, share what's going on with them. And I just think I fucking loved it. I was like, if my parents had told me this is my parent venting hour, I've been in therapy every week. Would have loved it. Mom, if you're dad, if you're listening, just saying that would have been a better marketing strategy.
Yeah, she has a 15 and a 12-year-old daughter. and then a younger son.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think it's really important that we know the signs when you have kids, and also just like how to support people that are going through it, so that doesn't affect you in a way that is beyond what you can handle.
Yeah,
and it's okay.
He said if you do identify, like a dramatic change like those things, he said you need to connect with your kids. So figure out how to connect with them, how to build a relationship with them. Jessica Alba gave her daughters venting time. He said it's important that you don't straight up say that there's something wrong with them and we need to fix it. So we're going to go to a psychiatrist. Like, that is probably terrifying for them. Also mortifying for them, because they're probably really embarrassed and feel guilty.
Nobody wants anything to be wrong with them in high school and junior high. Like, everybody wants
but
to
also
fit in.
like, what did he say? He said he didn't tell anybody about his abuse for 30 years. 30 years before he told anyone. So he was 38 before he ever talked about it. Right. So it's the guilt and the fear associated with it. It makes it easy to hide that kind of a thing. And so he said, be gentle in the approach.
Yeah. I think that's amazing.
All right, let's talk about those be it action items. What bold, executable, intrinsic, or targeted action items can we take away from your convo with Steven Wilson? He said that it's a terribly long journey ahead, to stabilize mental health. And he was specifically talking about the two different types of bipolar, disorder. And I want to say he had type 2. I think that's what he had. But, you two had a really interesting conversation about stability. And, he said there's so many people in this country who are suffering. He said 60 million people suffer from some kind of mental health, whether that's depression, or bipolar or whatever. And he said, we could start getting some things done if we as a community, who maybe we are suffering ourselves, or maybe we know someone who is suffering, but the only way that change will happen, in mental health in our country, in our communities, is if we become active in voicing our desire for change, for the need for support in this area is so important. I mean, I think that it's, again, because of the internet, it's so prevalent today. We can easily find all these instances where mental health is a problem today, and it feels like there's nothing being done about it. And he said actually that there are less support groups today. There are less psychiatrists today. There are less therapists today than there were. I don't actually know when the stats are, but in recent years, he said it's on a decline.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the business behind healthcare in our country, right? The fact that the insurance companies make it really challenging to get coverage for these things. And
they make it so challenging that the therapists can't make a living off of it.
Yeah, they can't do it anymore.
They don't take it anymore.
Yeah.
So like,
otherwise you're looking at paying out a couple $100 a session, $300 a session.
Oh my God. It's insane. And I don't fault the therapists for not taking insurance, because like I know how hard in the United States, I know how difficult it is to get paid from insurance companies. You're waiting months.
Yeah.
And they bring it down to nothing. And so people have bills to pay, and it just needs to be that's a whole other topic. At any rate, what is amazing is look in your community. There are some support groups that are out there. You have to find them. But like, I know in Las Vegas, there's different support groups that are based off for different types of people. And there are charities that want to help you. There are. So, if you are the person supporting someone who is mentally ill, I think, use your internet. Thank God we have it.
Yeah, I definitely completely sidetracked and took over your
it's okay.
point.
I'm going to go into it.
I think we can you already talked about finding the internet. He mentioned a company or an organization called NAMI, N-A-M-I. So, find that website and they have resources and tools on there for those who are suffering from mental health. And then also, he talked about calling your congressperson. So to be quite honest, I think that is the easiest possible thing that you could do.
You know what? Call your congressperson. We have a phone number because there's a sweatshirt you can buy off Crooked Media. Call your congressperson. I think it's a 222-224-3121. And we'll put that in the show notes. 202-224-3121. And you can call them and you can tell them, hey, I live in this state, this is my zip code, and they will connect you with your congressperson. And you can just leave them a voicemail. You'll almost never get someone on the phone. You just leave them a voicemail and you say, hi, my name is, this is my zip code, and I really, really, really care about mental health. And I think that you, as my congressperson, should be fighting on behalf of mental health. Yeah.
And you just need to tell them that. That is literally all you need to do is call them and just leave that voicemail.
And if you live in a different country, I don't know have your person's number for you, but I'm sure that's on the internet as well. And they work for you. Whether you get to vote for them or not, they're supposed to work for you. So you call them, you find a way to email them, things like that. Lastly, I just want to say, he mentioned that the stigma against mental health in this world is terrible. It really freaking is. I was so proud of my dad the other day. We were driving the car and we're talking about homelessness. And he said, well, most of them are mentally ill. And I was like, you're right. Thank you. They are. Like, they're not like I think people look at homeless people and they're just like, they should just pull it up from their bootstraps. There's jobs out there, should get them. Y'all, you have to have a physical address for resume. You do, period. You have to have a physical address to get your money from the VA system. You have to have physical addresses. PO boxes don't work. Yeah. So
I'm sure none of you have been following along, but I've been supporting a homeless family now for 5 years, I think. 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
They just finally got an address.
Yeah.
Finally.
So can you just, when you see people who are talking crazy on the sidewalk, I know it scares you. I know it makes you fearful. I know you want to turn away. We have got to stop otherizing people of mental health issues because it is a prevalent problem in this country. It's a prevalent problem in this world. There is help out there for people who can afford it or have access to it. And if you are at all able to make a phone call to your congressperson, please do. And if you've got someone in your life who's got issues that need support, do not stop until you find them support, because we have to stop making it like they're weirdos. They're not. They're human beings who have a hormone imbalance, who have a genetic imbalance. Like,
could be genetics.
It's so easy for this all to happen. And you also know what? You might be depressed one day. So at any rate, this whole episode was not supposed to be in on a low note. My whole point of doing this is I have seen what mental health issues in my own family have done to my own family and how they can tear people apart or make or strain relationships. We lived in LA and we saw the effects of mental health that was unsupported. And I feel I'm very grateful for how this podcast is doing. And I wanted to provide a story from someone who's actually is suffering from it, who is actually doing amazing things. And he's got a great book to help you if you don't even understand what it's like to have mental health issues. The empathy that you could have after you read this book could be what you need to help you support other people.
Yeah. In fact, I think that's a perfect way to end this. I'm actually going to read you the byline on this book here from Stephen. The title of the book is called Teetering on a Tightrope, My Bipolar Journey. He wrote it in 2022. He said, as an energetic, normal boy of 9, Stephen W. Wilson would not have guessed that the most horrifying day of his life was lurking just months ahead. From that terrifying day when he was at the theater to his suicidal ideations, his attempt to kill his father, and his subsequent hospitalization, Teetering on a Tightrope sweeps the reader headlong into the abyss of bipolar disorder. Wilson propels the reader into his sometimes out-of-control mind, inability to perform sexually, and overwhelming anger. Despite all that, Wilson gushes about the monumental times when he was in a state of normalcy, and could enjoy life's golden moments, all centered around his family and his friends. Teetering on a Tightrope shows that those who suffer from bipolar disorder can experience a full and productive life.
Yeah.
So there is hope.
I'm Lesley Logan.
And I'm Brad Crowell.
Thank you so much for joining us today. You are amazing, and we are so grateful for you. How are you going to use these tips in your life? We want to know. Tag the Be It Pod. Send us your questions. Share this with a friend who needs it. And until next time, be it till you see it.
Bye for now.
That's all I got for this episode of the Be It Till You See It podcast. One thing that would help both myself and future listeners is for you to rate the show and leave a review. And follow or subscribe for free wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to introduce yourself over at the Be It Pod on Instagram. I would love to know more about you. Share this episode with whoever you think needs to hear it. Help us and others be it till you see it. Have an awesome day.
Be It Till You See It is a production of the Bloom Podcast Network. If you want to leave us a message or a question that we might read on another episode, you can text us at +1 310 905 5534 or send a DM on Instagram at BeItPod.
It's written, filmed, and recorded by your host, Lesley Logan, and me, Brad Crowell.
It is transcribed, produced, and edited by the Epic team at Disenyo.co.
Our theme music is by Ali at Apex Production Music, and our branding by designer and artist Gianfranco Cioffi.
Special thanks to Melissa Solomon for creating our visuals.
Also to Angelina Herrico for adding all of our content to our website. And finally, to Meredith Root for keeping us all on point and on time.